Thank you again, everyone, for joining our webinar today on driver recruitment. My name is Robert Muirhead. I'm the UK Head of Marketing for AutoCab, and I'll be hosting this webinar. Just some quick housekeeping rules before we begin. The webinar will be recorded and available to view later this week. We're conducting a poll during the webinar. This is an anonymous poll. The results will be shown during the Q&A at the end. It's a simple question. As an operator, are you focused on recruiting new drivers into the industry or recruiting experienced drivers already in the industry? If you'd like to ask a question, please use the Q&A box. The questions will be answered at the end of the session. And you can rank important questions by using the upvote button. This will help us prioritize which questions get answered. Finally, after the webinar finishes, you can join us in the networking lounge to chat with our speakers and the colleagues as well. So introducing the speakers, we've got Lucy Carlin, who is an account strategist for the agency Curtis Gabriel. She specializes in supporting their clients within the transportation industry. Today, Lucy will be talking through the tactics for driver recruitment using social media platforms. Our second speaker today is Amir, General Manager of 001 Taxis. I'm sure some of our attendees will already know his name. He'll be telling us more about the impact of the driver shortage on his business and about the strategies that 001 Taxis have used to bring in drivers during the shortage. Our final speaker is Sadiq Ambia of Rusbridge Academy. He's an ex-driver and ex-operator, and now he's a tutor and expert in driver schools. He's focused on training new and existing drivers in the Level 2 certificate for professional taxis and private hire, which is a requirement for application of licenses in many local councils around the UK today. He'll be talking through the Rusbridge course and the practical considerations of how a driver school operates in order to support new driver recruitment or the upskilling training of existing drivers to new license standards. So first on the agenda, I'll give a bit of context on the driver shortage and some new research that AutoCab has commissioned into the impact of the shortage on regular taxi passengers. We'll then have our three speakers. Once our speakers are finished, we'll reveal the poll and we'll answer any questions that you've submitted during the webinar. And then finally, we'll move to the lounge area for any networking and further discussions. So you may be wondering why AutoCab is running a driver recruitment webinar. Well, we're aware that a big thing on everyone's mind today has been this driver shortage in the wake of the COVID pandemic. We've seen massive changes in fleet sizes thanks to the lockdowns or the threat of them, and we've seen changes in the way that people want to work. And this has left us in a situation where many operators have lost a quarter to even more than half their fleet. And in the meantime, demand has jumped back to pre-pandemic levels, which gives us this big problem of trying to fulfill all of the jobs that are available, and is also causing a drop in the quality of or the timeliness of the taxi service that we provide. For passengers, this is reducing confidence in the industry as a whole. And I just want to be clear that this is a long-term problem. So, of course, right now in January, we're past the peaks of demand in December, and we're through to a relatively slower period, but the underlying shortage is not going away. We're seeing older generations of drivers hit retirement. We're seeing in 2022, the government, local councils bringing in new regulations around tax checks for drivers and operators, daily charges for operating vehicles in a clean air zone. For some areas, for some operators, this is really going to be a make or break year. And it means that we need to focus on driver recruitment and retention to succeed, both in the short term to fulfill all of this work, but also in the long term to win back passenger confidence and keep on growing the industry. We've recently commissioned a study into passenger perceptions of the taxi industry during the driver shortage. We'll be sharing these in more detail soon, but I just wanted to give you all a sneak peek of what's to come and what's at stake here. And to be clear, the participants in this study are all regular taxi passengers within the United Kingdom, so those using taxis on a very regular basis. And in a nutshell, we're seeing that there is a clear need for more taxi provision. We're finding regular passengers are struggling or failing to book taxis over the last 2 months. 82% of regular passengers under the age of 24 walked home alone at night because they couldn't get a taxi. 63% of women felt unsafe because they couldn't. More than a quarter of people missed medical appointments. And on the whole, we're starting to see a slow but steady loss in confidence of using taxi services as a result of these shortages. In some ways, we're glad that it's only 1 in 5 currently who no longer feel comfortable relying on a taxi service. But hopefully this shows the growing impact of the shortage, and it shows that we need to be proactive in finding a solution through driver recruitment, through retention, and by preparing against upcoming changes. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Lucy Carlin.
Hi everyone, I'll just share my presentation for you, so give me 1 second. Perfect. So today I'll be talking about driver recruitment and how social media can help. So firstly, here was Gabriel. So we're a global social, digital and design marketing agency. We're based in the Northeast, but we operate in North America, continental Europe, Middle East and Australia. We have a dedicated transportation department, which is primarily where I operate. We have over 80 transportation chauffeur clients across the UK, USA and Australia. So that's just an overall of who we are. And then in terms of a bit more about CG, we're Facebook marketing partners. So what this means is we are qualified to utilise our clients' paid advertising budget to generate the most return of investment, which is great. We're also Google accredited, which means that we're specialists in search marketing, PPC, and much more. So that's CG, and then a little bit more about me and my role. So I'm an account strategist. I've been with CG for 2.5 years. And my role entails social and digital strategy, client communications, project management, creative ideation, analytics and return of investment reporting, and then also just keeping up to date with transportation trends, which naturally includes driver recruitment. So a little bit into CG before and after the pandemic. So before the pandemic, driver recruitment was definitely something that we offered, but it wasn't the main service by any means. It was more driving automation through app downloads and generating bookings. Flip that post-pandemic, specifically, post the first lockdown lift. Now driver recruitment is at the forefront of most of our social strategies for our clients. The recurring theme is that there's not enough drivers and too much work. So how does social media help? So there's basically two main methods that we use. So there's organic social. So one of the main things is Facebook community groups. So these are being on the rise globally. There's 1.8 billion people that use these every month. So there's a big audience there. They're not all taxi drivers or prospective taxi drivers, but there's a big network there. So there's 3 types that we use. There's region-specific driver groups. So Northeast taxi drivers, Manchester drivers, things like that. There's also nationwide industry groups. So these can either be per dispatch provider or localized in terms of sort of vehicles and things like that, if it's wheelchair hire or if it's black cabs. And then you've also got local community groups as well. So these are just region specific, so Manchester Borough groups. However, the drivers will be in there. So it's just about utilising these groups, sharing content into there, starting conversations and just getting sort of a bit of research as well. What are the public thinking about taxis in their community? So that's one of the tools that we use. There's also regular organic posting, which is probably the main one. So this is really important to highlight testimonies from drivers. So you can do this in a written format, but we find that video formats are definitely the most effective. So it's basically drivers selling the role themselves and their own experiences. It ties onto the next bit, which is highlighting key USPs. So USPs of being a driver: choose your own hours, be your own boss, excellent earning potential, and so on. And then the last one as well is also sharing new offers and for return drivers or new drivers. So refer a friend if there's a rent discount for the first 2 weeks, things like that. And then the last organic tool is community engagement. So this one is more interactive and live on the platform. So the social listening to find potential drivers. So primarily this is done on Twitter. You'll search via hashtags and you'll find conversations and you'll bring your client into there, and then you'll start conversations. So if they're looking for a new job, if they want to get back in the trade because their licenses ran out because they weren't operating over the lockdown, things like that. And then there's also engaging with existing drivers on the platform. So most of our clients, especially their Facebook and Twitters, their audiences are existing drivers or old drivers. So it's just engaging with them, keeping them fresh, taking on their recommendations as well. And then lastly, engaging with local councils and authorities. So as we all know, there are some council restrictions in place that make it harder to recruit new drivers. So it's engaging with them, letting them know that the fleets are there, will have these issues, and sort of trying to get them to help in any way that we can. So that's what we do on organic social. And then paid social is our main platform to help with driver recruitment. So there's various different campaigns and techniques that we use. Primarily, there is native lead generation. So this is an ad where a customer will fill out the form natively on Facebook. The form is fully customizable. It's a quick and easy user experience. The leads are sent over in real time. So it means that operators or fleet managers can pick up on these leads and then convert them as quickly as possible, because as we all know, the quicker you get a lead, the quicker you get in touch, the easier it is to convert. And then just in terms of analytics as well, we're data driven in what we do. So we use the Facebook pixel and Google UTMs for that as well. And we've also got the ability to retarget drivers who may have been on the form and not completed. We can then retarget them and say, are you still thinking about joining X company? Here's an offer, to sort of add that hook to get them over the line. So that is native lead generation. There's also traffic. So traffic is primarily used with either existing forms on the website, or we'll set up a new landing page with a bespoke form. It'll be basically the same questions that you would get in native lead gen, sent over in real time, depending on where the client wants the emails to go to. That'll all be programmed within the website. Same analytic tools again, Facebook Pixel, Google UTM, and then you can also retarget as well. So we always try and do an A/B test between lead gen and traffic, because they are the main forms that we use. On average, we normally find that lead gen performs the best because it's a quicker user experience. You don't have to leave Facebook to do it. It's highly customizable, so people tend to prefer that. But traffic is not without its successes as well. So it depends. It's on a client-to-client basis, but we'll normally find that lead gen is the best out of all of them in terms of generating those leads and the quality of the leads as well. But we also have awareness and engagement. So these are more for awareness that we are recruiting. They're not as easy to quantify in terms of leads, but it's just essentially a standard post that you'll reach out to as many people as possible. And the call to action on those is normally a telephone number or an email address. And that is paid social and how it helps. And then we've also got a case study to sort of demonstrate what we've done in the past and how this can help. So we had a client in Northern Ireland, and their goal was to cater to the capacity issue that they had. Likewise with all fleets, post-lockdown, not enough drivers, too much demand. So how did we do it? In this case, we used native lead gen campaigns that were targeted at individuals who are most likely to have a PSV license. And that worked out quite well. So we used a mixture of still images and short and snappy videos to highlight the key USPs of joining the company. And just in terms of some statistics as well, we reached over 87,000 people. No, 87,000 impressions, sorry. So we've seen that many times. It reached over 22,000 people. We had 979 link clicks. So that's people entering the form. And then from that, we had 138 driver leads at a cost per lead of £3.49. So just to put that into perspective, £3.49 a lead. If only half those leads converted, so 70 drivers, the lowest rent deal that they have per week is £85. So that's roughly £5,865 that they will get back in 1 week for a £480 investment. So that's in 1 week, and that's for the whole campaign. So it's definitely worth it. Obviously, the conversion rate is quite high in this one, but it's important to know with this company that they have a driver school. So most leads were good leads. So, the conversion rate could be higher. And that's just a bit of context for you there. So this all sounds great, but it is not without its obstacles. Like anything in marketing, any marketeer will tell you that there's always new obstacles in place. So the main three are data privacy restrictions. So with the iOS 14 update came a real lockdown on what privacy could be shared. So basically now, if you have updated and you've got an iPhone, and you went on Facebook, you can opt out of tracking. This means that our analytic tools can't follow you around as much. So it means it's harder to retarget and to quantify what we've done. At the moment, the Pixel roughly is estimated that's at a 27% capacity, which obviously isn't ideal. But we're always working together with our team within paid social and the digital team to find new ways to combat this. So we have a mixture of efforts. So it's utilising the Pixel with the Google UTM, and we can track that in Google Analytics. And then Facebook have also recently brought out the Facebook API, which is linked to Tag Manager. So that's also a really promising one as well. The second obstacle that we face is the types of driver leads. So depending on the fleet, most fleets will want licensed drivers who are ready to get on the road, and that can fill that gap within days or a week. Whereas if we're recruiting new drivers, there might be more demand, but how long is it going to take to get a license in the current situation that we're in, whether it be the local restrictions, the DBS backlogs, etc., etc. So that's a big obstacle that we face, and I'm sure everyone can relate to that one as well. So one of the ways that we try and combat this is with the detailed targeting. And it has worked in the past, which is good, but it's just another obstacle that we face. And then finally is the Facebook's new restriction. So this is really quite new. Just before Christmas, this came out. It's already in the US, but Facebook now makes it so if you're doing a job advert, your targeting is really limited. So whereas previously we could target or we could form an ideal audience for existing taxi drivers who already had a license, that's sort of been stripped away now. So we're working really closely with our team to combat this. And one of the ways that we do it is by utilising the retargeting information that we already have stored in the Pixel, and then also custom audiences from past drivers, existing drivers, making lookalike audiences and things like that. So it's very much a lot of work within the team to work it out, but it's not the only challenge we've faced, and it won't be the last, and we'll get past it like we do with everything. So the final bit that I'm going to talk about is sort of the future of driver recruitment and what we see and sort of our hopes for it as well. So there's three main ones. So we hope councils make it easier for new drivers to enter the trade and get their licenses. We've seen it in situations like Torquay, where they've brought down the cost and they've made it easier to get your medical, and they've helped with various other things where you haven't had to do your taxi test for 6 months. We'll hope that everyone's follow suit with that. The second one is that we also hope and will continue to utilise paid social and organic techniques to recruit new drivers and generate return of investment for our clients. And then lastly, the most important one for me at the moment is we really want Facebook to work with advertisers to overcome these current restrictions that are in place and make it easier to help our clients and help the communities, because we all know that it's essentially a public safety issue that we don't have enough drivers. So we all want to work together with that. And that was everything from me. Thanks very much for listening.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lucy. All right, on to Amir. Take it away.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. So yeah, it's been an interesting time, I think, with us. Obviously, before the pandemic, we were growing nicely. We were almost at 600 cars. The pandemic hit. Obviously, we lost a lot of cars. We didn't really know what was going to happen when it ended, but when restrictions were lifted, we found that we were running late on a lot of jobs. Customers were saying, "Oh, what's happened to your company? You're constantly running late. You were reliable. Drivers were not coming back." So what we decided to do was actually speak to these drivers to find out what's happened, why they're not coming back to the industry, because we thought once everything goes back to normal, the drivers would just return, but it didn't happen. One of the major things we found when we spoke to the drivers was they said they've moved on to other things, they've left the industry, they don't want to come back to it. A lot of them are doing deliveries because they feel like it's a lot less work for them. They make similar sort of money, without the hassle, and they don't have to deal with the passengers. So we thought, how can we bring these drivers back to the industry? So in September, we tried just join our company, refer a friend. So we tried referral to see if that would encourage drivers to come back to us. That did yield a little bit, but not to the levels we thought. So then we decided to do other things. In December, we said to the drivers, right, just come and join us. We won't charge you any rent. That yielded something, but it didn't. So we're trying to get to why are these drivers just not returning? The existing drivers, they've moved on. So I think the industry now is all about new drivers. And with the new drivers, what we find is, so we did advertise for them. But when they were responding to the advertisement, they were like, I want to join your company, but we would ask them, have you got a taxi badge? They're like, no. They don't know where to start with that. So we thought, I think we're going to have to do like driver training for these guys to help them through the process, because a lot of people don't realize what's involved in obtaining a taxi badge. So in January, we've started driver classes. So that involves one of our guys sitting with them, explaining to them how the process works to simplify it. And we're hoping that's going to bring a lot more drivers back into the industry. So I think that's where we are now. It's all about new drivers. Well, it'd be nice to have the existing drivers back. They're just not coming back, unfortunately. They've moved on to other things. So obviously we're doing social media campaigns. We're doing regular meets at shopping centres with putting up banners, approaching drivers to see if they would join like that, and see if that would yield more results for us. So it's early days, but we have had a good response to it. So we're hoping that will give us a good portion of drivers back. Obviously, we're an Uber partner in Oxford, one of the second ones. So that's another selling point we're giving to the drivers, that if you join 001, not only have you got the great 001 work, but you've got the advantage of the Uber work. So that's bringing in numbers as well, hopefully, for us. We're also doing a fare increase, because a lot of the drivers are saying, we're getting similar sort of money on Uber Eats. Why should we come and do taxis when it's maybe slightly less sometimes? So we've increased the fares again to encourage them to come back and to keep the drivers that are already with us, to keep them motivated to come back out on the road. And we shall see how that improves things for us.
We're happy now to take a few minutes to answer Q&A. And also I'll be interested to see what the results of that poll were. Right, let me see. So, okay, so it looks like I'm actually a bit surprised by this. To be honest, I was expecting to see operators more focused on experienced drivers versus new drivers. My assumption would be simply because the low-hanging fruit of recruitment is existing drivers with licenses, but it's quite positive and refreshing to see that new drivers are a focus here, because as we were talking about at the start of the webinar, the demand is far and above what we can get out of the existing driver pool, especially with the old generation retiring. So it's really interesting. I don't know if anyone else on any of the other speakers have a comment on it. It looks like there's been a lot of interesting conversation about the situation with local authority licensing. I've actually got a couple of questions for Lucy on the social media recruitment side, just around the lead gen forms you were mentioning. So you can stick a form on Facebook to just directly get new recruit or existing driver information on platform. How customizable is that? Is that just basic Facebook fields, or can you do things like, can you ask, can you have a field that says, do you have a license, or what's the renewal date, or things like that? How customizable?
Yeah. So it's essentially fully customizable within its limits. So you can have yes or no questions, you can have multiple choice, and then you can also have short answer fields. So the main question that we'll put in every single form is, do you have a license? So whether it be PCO or PSV, and that'll sort of determine, when you're looking at the leads after, the license rate, because
right.
And I'm quite interested by that poll, actually, because a lot of my experiences, people do want licensed drivers unless they have a sort of driver school where they can onboard them and help them get their license, which is obviously, the pool is nice because it makes life a lot easier, especially with the new restrictions, because, you know, all you have to do is show the USPs of joining the industry, and most people are enticed if you present it well. So, but yeah, the form is fully customizable. You can ask how many years driving experience you have, what car do you drive, because a lot of clients might only want Mercedes drivers or wheelchair accessible, or you know, if you're going into courier and things like that. Do you own a van? Do you own a motorcycle? Things like that. So it's quite easy to get all that information before you even contact them, because if you look at a lead and you say they don't have a license and you're not bothered, then you won't waste your time giving them a ring just to find that out. So it's quite useful.
Okay, and just another one, I suppose, a bit of a round table. What kind of messages are you finding that are working well for recruitment? So, or whether it's on social or you know, Amir, in general, what is the kind of what's drawing people in, or what's, you know, what are they ignoring? I'm interested in that side of it too.
Yeah, so for me, it's sort of driver deals work really well. So if it's guaranteed earnings in your first month, or if it's, you know, the weekly rent is capped for X amount of months, or just really highlighting the USPs is the biggest one. Driver testimonials and videos as well work really well. And I think it's just because you're hearing it from an existing driver, so you can sort of relate, or you can place yourself in those shoes. So they tend to, that human interest aspect tends to work really well. So those for me are the two biggest wins, along with just short and snappy videos, nice eye-catching, like, you know, images, nothing too complicated. Drivers wanted in X area, things like that. You don't want to overcomplicate it, just straight to the point, and that normally works.
Right, short and sweet and focused on the money. Right.
Exactly.
There's probably a quick question for you, Amir. Adam from Value Cars has asked, has anyone found that using local cab has increased work volumes to get more drivers in?
Yes, it has, definitely. I get a lot of drivers who do approach us to join us. The first question they're asking is, oh, you're with Uber. Can I join based on that? Because they obviously know how much work they could potentially do out of it. And obviously we've seen a massive increase in Uber bookings. Obviously the lockdown hasn't helped, because Oxford is, every city is different, but Oxford, because it relies on the tourists more, obviously they're not able to be here at the moment due to restrictions. But as they come back in, we just envisage that work will go up, and it already is, to be fair. It's already increasing. We've noticed a couple of weeks, numbers are starting to go up. So it's definitely a massive bonus having that extra work on top of your work. That's why it's important for us to get the drivers to be able to sustain that work and provide a reliable service that we always used to be able to. Unfortunately, we're not able to at the moment due to the lack of drivers. The work is there, but not the drivers. But so if we can get both of it, hopefully it can be a good, good all round for everybody.
Thanks, Amir. That's really, really useful to hear. We had another one actually for you, Lucy, from a fellow Lucy. She said, could you share the top Facebook industry groups to join?
So this one is it depends on the area, depends on the type of service that you're offering. So if it's chauffeur, is it black cab, is it private hire? But normally top tips are region specific ones, or anything that has taxi or private hiring, or likewise a dispatch provider in there as well, because they'll normally sort of, it's like auto cab drivers, stuff like that. So they take a bit of digging to find sometimes, but they're always there. It is hard to join, as some have restrictions where you can only join as individuals and not as a company. So you might have to join as yourself to do that, because it won't let you join. Or there's some answers that you've got to fill in. So if it's a driver group, you'll have to explain that you're actually an operator joining on behalf. So there's little ways that you have to get around it, but they are really, really useful, even just from as I said a bit earlier, even just from a research perspective, to see what is going on out there, and sort of what the narrative is, and what the existing drivers are feeling, and what the community's feeling. It's just quite a useful tool to have, and we always tend to use it in overall social strategy, not just driver recruitment as well.
Cheers. Thanks so much, Lucy.
Yeah.
Just a couple of others, just to answer Amar's. Yes, the video will be uploaded later this week to watch, so we will share it on our socials and via email. Just a kind of a general question to the group. Do you think we need to maybe minimise the shift hours of experienced drivers, and what do you think and what do you think if it will result good? Sorry, I don't think I worded that correctly, but do you think the result will be good? Probably. Anyone who wants to sort of pick that one up?
That's probably one for Amir, I think.
It's a difficult one because obviously the longer they're on the road, the more coverage you're getting out of them. But obviously, if they're new to the industry, there's a safety aspect as well. So you don't really want them to be working 12, 13, 14 hours. I mean, I guess it's all about how much they make. If they come out when it's busy, if they've made their money in 5, 6 hours, they're more likely to log off. And that's what we found after the pandemic finished. We weren't covering the work. One of the reasons for that was the drivers that were working, they weren't actually working those long hours. So it's a difficult one. You do want them to work long hours, but at the same time, it's a safety aspect as well. But because they're making their money quickly, they log off a lot quicker as well.
We hear that a lot as well, actually, Amir, that's, you know, the drivers that we do have that we've had for years are finish it. Yeah, they're making their money by 6 o'clock, so they're going home and they're having dinner. Whereas usually they'd probably put in a 12-hour shift and they don't want to work a Saturday night because usually.
No, I think the newer drivers, they probably do more hours when they do start. You're fresh, you know, you're new. Whereas the older drivers, they've got their set patterns. They know when to come out, when to finish. Whereas the new ones are kind of feeling their way, so they'll probably will do more hours for you because they're not sure how it works at the moment. That's what a lot of drivers ask us when they join us. Oh, what hours shall I work? When is it busy? And I always say to them, look, it's different for everybody. But, you know, everybody finds their own way, what they're going to do. I can't say to you, right, come out at this time and you're guaranteed to make money. It's all what works for you. And the experienced drivers know that. The new ones are still working on that, and they will eventually, you know, come to that. Whether they're going to do 8 hours or 10 hours, what works for them, whether it's day or it's night or it's mid-shift.
So do you think it's probably more about setting the right expectations for drivers as they come into the industry? And it sounds like with experienced drivers kind of know what they want, and then it's, you know, newer drivers need to be given some idea of, oh, if you work this many hours, you know, you might get this much out of it, or it might, you know, I guess give them more information about what the best hours are for them.
Yeah, it varies. I mean, obviously, when we've done our recruitment pushes, on the ads we put, you could earn this X amount of money, and they'll come to me. They're like, "Oh, so I can earn that much money?" And then it's like, well, you need to put in a certain amount of hours to earn that kind of money. Obviously, that's based on an average. I'm not saying you're going to earn that. You might earn more. You might earn less. It will vary. Obviously, you know, you need to. Once they get onto that road, they'll figure it out, whether it's 8 or 10 or 12. Plus, I guess it's different for each driver's circumstances. Some drivers that are new to the industry, maybe they've moved to the country, the family's not here, they're able to put in those longer hours, whereas the ones that have got families there, they probably do shorter hours because they need to be home with their kids. They've got other commitments. We used to have one driver that he would travel to Oxford every now and then from Poland, and he would literally, when he was here, he would just work non-stop, make great money and go back home. But again, it's different for everybody. But when we're doing the driver classes, obviously that's one thing you can kind of try and educate them on. Safe hours, obviously. They shouldn't be going over the 12-hour. Obviously, their insurance becomes invalidated straight away. So as long as they can stick it. But the way the industry is at the moment, they're going to make their money really quickly. So I don't think they're going to do long hours anymore. That's what we're finding with our drivers. They're doing maybe, whereas before they were doing maybe 8 to 10, they're probably doing 6 to 8, which obviously impacts the amount of coverage we have as well as a company.
I've just seen an interesting question from Takir Abbas. So this is a far-fetched one, as you said. What options are there for drivers in the future if self-driving vehicles become a norm in the UK? So it's an absolute wild card. I'd say just from what I've seen, from AutoCab's perspective, the idea that operators are preparing for self-driving right now is sort of non-existent. I don't think it's on anyone's mind in the short term. I may be wrong, Amir. You may have a self-driving car yourself already, but from what we've been looking at right now, the big challenge in the next few years isn't so much self-driving, and it's more the sustainability and the push to electric vehicles. There's going to be a big push to go from high emissions to ultra low emissions into EVs. And I think that's probably where the investment focus will be in the short term. But I'll leave it to Amir to talk about what 001 are doing with self-driving technology.
It's an interesting one and a worrying one at the same time, I guess. Obviously, the zero emission is the interesting one. So obviously in Oxford, they want all the vehicles to be fully electric by 2025. So obviously, when we're purchasing our vehicles now, we're in like, do we go with fully electric vehicles or do we just still go with the hybrids? It's kind of a difficult one, which way to go. But the way the industry is headed and the way we need these zero emission, obviously it's going to be fully electric. Obviously, once you've got these fully automized mobiles, I guess the next step is driverless. It's an interesting one. I don't really want to think about it too much, to be fair. I don't know. It's worrying, I guess. I mean, you get in a taxi and there's nobody there. The car's driving itself. But I guess that's where the industry is headed, and we'll see how it pans out over the coming years. But yeah, it does worry me, that one.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting one. I remember, looking into it 10 years ago, and it's sort of always been a technology that's supposed to happen 10 years from now. And now 10 years later, it's still 10 years ahead, and it seems to kind of continue that way endlessly. So I don't know when it will become a concern. But I suppose the other side of it as well is that there's a value to having a human in a car. There's safeguarding. There's all sorts of added value that human drivers give to the taxi service, the private hire service. A lot of the kind of taxi provision is down to regular user with disability, or chauffeuring a child to school, that sort of thing. So there's definitely always going to be a place for people in it, I'm sure. That's a really interesting question, though.
With that one as well, if it's like a lot of drivers help people with their shopping, or if you've got a wheelchair that you need in the back, or if you've got a pram, if you've just been picked up from the airport, a self-driving car is not going to do that, whereas, the actual driver will. And I think a lot of people enjoy the experience, especially a lot of older people who have regular journeys of regular drivers. Like, a big part of their day will be talking to that regular driver. And like, as you say, with school runs, it's, if it's the same driver every time, you do build that relationship with them. So I think it's important. And as a consumer, I don't know how much I'd love to be in a self-driven car anyway. Maybe not for quite a while to know that. I wouldn't be the tester anyway. I'd let someone else do that.
Yeah, agreed. Definitely agreed there. So I see that there's still a couple of unanswered questions, but can I suggest that we move over to the lounges now to discuss them with other operators on the call and other drivers on the call. I think they're valid questions, so we'll definitely bring them across. But I think now's the time to start discussing more widely with our attendees. So again, thank you everybody for attending this. It's been really interesting. It's been it's the first webinar I've presented as well, so I've thoroughly enjoyed it. So let's move over to the lounge area of the of Emmy, and we can continue these discussions. And we can also give Siddiq another opportunity to talk through his the details of running a driver school and how that service works.